Hello, Holly Rustic here with Grant Writing and Funding, and I'm here to help you grow capacity, increase funding, and to advance mission. Now that might be the mission of the nonprofit where you are currently working, or you may be a nonprofit consultant or grant writer, or freelance grant writer, and the many different nonprofits you serve. All right, in this week's episode, we have the 7 tips that I have, my 7 grant writing tips to increased grant funding. Now, these tips, it's not about how to write a grant application. We have plenty of that on our YouTube as well. These are just kind of some random tips that I have seen, and they're kind of like the do's and the don'ts of grant writing. 7 common ones that I see, so I'm just going to highlight these. Now, why are these important? Well, as you know, or you may not know, that grants are scored on points to get awarded most of the time. So if you, and usually, what is the score you need to actually secure funding? Well, honestly, sometimes it's 93 points out of 100 and above. Sometimes it's even higher than that. Grants are competitive. So these little tips that I'm going to share with you today could be the difference between a point or 2 or even more. So definitely a way for you to increase your grant writing skills and to get those extra points. And these are also just some bad habits that I've seen, so you want to get rid of these. All right, so let's go ahead and go over them. But first, I just want to go ahead and say, please come to our free grant writing webinar on March 14th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in 2022. Now, if you're watching this YouTube afterwards, because lots of people watch it afterwards, no worries. We still have tons of free webinars and master classes, so check out grantwritingandfunding.com to see what's coming around the time that you watch this. We also have our 6-week live grant writing master training coming up on March 22nd, 2022. Once again, if you come across this YouTube channel after the fact, please do check out, once again, grantwritingandfunding.com, and I have all the links below so you can see on the different grant training that we have available. And that is my most popular training. 6 weeks, we write a master grant application. You get feedback every single week we meet. There's tons of videos and courses as well, including the live portion. All right, so let's get into our topic today. And that is the 7 different tips, my grant writing tips to increase your funding. Tip number 1, go after funding opportunities based on how good of a fit they are for your actual project, not just on how much money is out there. Now, this could be seen as, oh my gosh, I see all of these zeros at the end of this funding opportunity, and I want to go after that because there's a lot of money in that pot. And sure, there's some justification to that. However, if you have to spend more than 1 or 2 sentences explaining why your project is a good fit for that grant funding opportunity, then it might not be a good fit. Right? So how you kind of eliminate chasing the money or mission drifting for going out to seeing the dollar bills and your eyes lighting up is to really say, can I say why this is a good fit in 1 sentence to 2 sentences? Grant writing tip number 2. Do your research and see if there are any other nonprofit organizations doing the exact same project that you want to do in your area, your geographic area. All right, so, and what that means is a lot of times we have these ideas and we say, there's this need and I want to develop, this community garden or whatever. But we don't do the research to actually find out if there is an existing community garden. We just kind of assume there's not because we see a need. But we want to be able to do the research and really find out if there is an existing program. And it doesn't mean that your idea still can't come to fruition, but in this way, you're going to be able to get better research for your grant research section, and you can really design a program that's needed. So there may be another community garden within, a couple of miles from your nonprofit where you're thinking of doing your community garden. However, after you talk to them and you've done the research and found them, you might come to the conclusion that they have a wait list. So there's definitely a need for another community garden. Or maybe they don't have a wait list, but they only serve senior citizens and you want to serve the community at large. So in this way, you can really see the market research on if your program is needed. Grant writing tip number 3, use citations in your grant application. Whenever you're writing grants, citations, sources, everything, right? So if you're, not just saying, okay, this is needed, but to tell me where you're getting the research from. So is it statistics, reports, testimonials, case studies, etc.? And then use the citation in there, right? So if you're saying this community garden is needed because, 68% of the kids 10 years and old and under are malnourished in this community, then you would put where you got that information from. Put it in your grant application. And don't just put one citation, put many to support what you're saying the need is. So use citations. Grant writing tip number 4, use specific language in your grant application. 2 of the most often kind of words or phrases that I see in grant applications that always get kind of points deducted are lack and need for. Okay, so lack, it could be, there are a lack of community gardens in our neighborhood. Well, I don't know if you mean 2, is 2 lack, is 5 lack, is 0 lack. I don't know what that is as a reviewer, and it's hard for me to score that if I am just seeing the word lack. And then of course, need for, you're saying there's a need for the community gardens. Well, why? What is the need? Once again, we want to go back to those citations. We want to use specific language. So watch the word lack, watch the word need for, or that phrase, and use specific language. Once again, pulling down from those resources, citations, etc. Grant writing tip number 5, do not use flowery, emotional, evocative language in your grant application. Sure, you might be able to wind just a tiny bit in, but if it's just a Sarah McLachlan commercial, just trying to evoke tears, then you're not using specific language, right? Then you're probably telling a story and using creative writing versus statistics, testimonials, etc. Yes, you can still evoke emotions using data, okay? And I'm a creative writer. I'm not bashing it at all. But I'm saying grant writing is technical, and you do want to wind in, if you're saying 68% of the population of 10-year-olds and under are malnourished, that is emotional, right? That does pull something. But if you're just trying to tell a story about Paul and he did this and then he was, you know what I mean? And you go down this whole kind of spiral of just emotional language and you're not using stats, then, here's the thing, guys. Every single program is needed, right? There are heartfelt kind of strings on the programs, but when reviewers have to say, here's your criteria and you have to score on this, they never say score on the emotional value of this program because they know that every program is needed. So once again, that just goes back to say, use specific language, use citations, don't use that flowery emotional language. Grant writing tip number 6, the rule of thumb for objectives is a maximum of 3. All right, so once you get to your objective portion of grant writing, if you're putting 8 objectives or 12 objectives, they're probably not objectives any longer. They're probably actually activities. Now you can use 10, 20 activities under each objective, but just make sure you don't have too many. There's always exceptions, of course, but when it comes to objectives, try to keep no more than 3. And rather than that too, is if you put too many, the budget's going to become huge, the length of time to actually get those done are going to be big, etc. So no more than 3. And grant writing tip number 7, even though I'm putting this last, do not save the budget for last. All right, and what I mean by that is a lot of times, most grant applications are going to be asking you about the organization, the need, the research, the objectives, how you're going to do the program. And their last question most of the time is, what is the budget and what is the budget narrative? That doesn't mean you have to work through the grant writing application in a linear way and save the budget for last. If you do that, you will more than likely, you're going to be rewriting a lot of the narrative. Why? It's because once you get to the budget and you realize, okay, for all of these objectives, now I got to write down how many people I got to hire, and I already collected their resumes, and all these supplies I'm going to buy, I've already collected the quotes, and now I'm going to do the budget. Well, all of those positions you put, all of the supplies that you put, now you might not have enough money for all of that, right? And you've just written all of this text, you've maybe, grabbed these resumes, all of the quotes, all of that, and you can't even utilize it. So you've wasted a lot of time. And then you have to go back and rework it. So I recommend that you actually write the budget when you're working on your objectives. And that can be before you even write the whole rollout of the program. You need to know what the rollout is, and the budget can help drive that so you don't have to rewrite the narrative. So there you go, guys. Those are my 7 grant writing tips to increase your funding. And as you can see, they're just kind of here and there, but these are things I see over and over and over again when I'm doing grant reviews, and I'm not able to score, or I have to deduct points if these things are not addressed. So other grant reviewers will do the same. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed that. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not subscribed already.